Welcome to Bigfoot Society. If you have Bigfoot activity to report from the same areas discussed in this episode, please reach out to me directly after this episode. And if you'd like to be on the podcast to discuss a personal Bigfoot encounter, please reach out to me directly at bigfootsociety@gmail.com. Do you wish there was more Bigfoot Society to listen to every week? Well, there is now. If you become a supporting member over at Patreon, you get a special members-only episode every single week on Wednesdays, and sometimes even more episodes. Head on over to patreon.com/the Bigfoot Society. And now let's get on with the show. All right, Bigfoot Society, we've got the privilege of talking to Neil today. Neil's from bigfootsociety.com, and he's an individual that I reached out to after checking out his website. He's got a lot of really cool stuff on there regarding Bigfoot, and sounds like he's got just an incredible story that I've invited him onto the show tonight to share. And Neil, how are you doing today, sir?
I'm doing good. How you doing?
Doing great. And this is one of the ones that I have really been looking forward to. I mean, just I've seen the stuff you share and the stuff you have on the site, and it just I think people are especially going to learn a ton from this show tonight. So, Neil, let's make the best use of our time. And I'm going to let you go ahead and take us back as far back as we need to go to when you started experiencing all this. And feel free to go right ahead, sir.
Okay, sounds good. Let me start a little background on myself. When I grew up, I lived in the country. We didn't have any neighbors to play with and stuff like that. But I used to love the outdoors. My dad would take me hunting, and he learned me many valuable lessons. One of the ones he always taught me is don't shoot and kill anything unless you're planning on eating it. So that's one thing that was drilled into me. You're taking a life. Don't take a life unless you're going to use it for food. But I was always in the woods. My mom got so mad at me that she put a bale out in front of the house because we had like 77 acres right there at the house. So I was always out in the woods, and she could call as much as she wanted, but I could never hear her. So she put a bell out in front so she can call me to let me know, come out of the woods, it's time to come in and eat or go somewhere. But I used to love to be in the woods. I would sit up on the hillsides looking over a big bottom. I would just close my eyes and listen to all the animals, the sounds they make. And what's amazing is after a short period of time, I learned that animals talk to each other. They make certain sounds, and if you learn them, you can actually tell that sound means that this animal's around, especially the squirrels. The squirrels have a sound for everything. If it's a hawk or an owl, they'll give one loud squeal, and all the squirrels will freeze, won't say a word. And then when they pass by, then the one that did the original scream will start up again, and then all the others will start moving and talking. But they had a different sound for dogs, cats, people, deer. Oh, they hated deer because deer would eat their acorns. And they would just start yelling and screaming at them like there's something they could do. The deer just look up at them like, you're crazy. These are my acorns too, But it was so funny because I started realizing that if I can learn this stuff in a short period of time, how much do these animals know that are there all the time? My biggest nemesis was the crow. The crows could see in color, and they have binocular vision, and they will surround an area and they will give you away because they can see that orange on you that my dad always made me wear orange. They can see that orange from miles away. They would let the whole woods know, and you might as well pack it up then. If you see a doe or a little one, that'll be all you see because the crows already gave you away. The big bugs, stuff like that, you're not going to see them. But I learned how to track animals. I learned what was normal to the woods. I learned about scrapes, normal tree breaks, tornadoes coming through, what it looks like. Floods, what it looks like, all kinds of different things I learned. In fact, it got to the point that if somebody shot a deer and didn't kill it, it was injured, they would call me to help hunt it down or to track it so that they can put it out of its misery as quick as possible. Because that's not what hunters do. Hunters that are going to eat it, want to put them out of their misery as quick as possible, don't want the pain and suffering. But so I learned a lot of valuable lessons as a kid. Now I'll come back into the situation. About 10 years ago, my wife found this property in North Georgia that was beautiful. The property was beautiful, but it had been abandoned for 8 to 10 years. So it was overgrown. So as soon as you drive into it, you see brush and scrubs and everything, 8 to 10 foot tall. And I'm like, ugh, I don't know about this. But then when you get up there and see the house, how pretty the house is, and you realize it's got 2 streams on it. It had an old pond on it. There's some structures on it and stuff. And everything that I saw, and I love deer. Deer are my favorite animals of all of them. I love to watch them grow their antlers each year. And this should have been a deer haven. There was everything, scuppling vines, grapes. They had planted some grapes. They had grapes. There was honeysuckle. Oh my goodness, there was stuff all over the place, browse that the deer could eat. So I just knew there had to be a bunch of deer here. So after we saw it, we ended up buying the property. And it was going to be some work because we had to make a pad for all the kids to park on. The front had to be cleaned up and bush hogged so that you actually had grass and stuff out there again. And back behind the house was the same way. It had to be cleared up. So it took some time. I always wanted to have fruit trees when I retired. This was going to be our retirement home. So I planted apple trees of 2 types, red delicious and yellow delicious, peach trees, 2 types of peaches, 3 types of pears. It already had some fig trees on it. It already had some pecan trees on it. I planted some blueberry bushes and also planted some persimmons. Now, of course, the deer, when they come around, they love to get on the apple and peach trees and eat the little browse off of it. So all of the stuff I planted, I had to put netting around about 6 foot tall, put T-posts in the ground, netting around it. And then on the ground, I would put the fabric so that the grass wouldn't compete with the young trees and they could grow better. Not only that, but if fruit falls off of it, it's not going to get dirty and messed up because it's going to be on the fabric. So there's a lot of things that we did to try to make it back into shape the way we wanted it to be. The funny thing about it was there just wasn't that many deer tracks. And I couldn't understand that. This place was perfect for deer. It had the 2 creeks. The banks were cut 10 to 12 foot deep. It had nice clean water, all the stuff to eat, but there just weren't that many here. So with me loving nature like I did, I went and started planting clover out in the front field and winter peas during the winter. I would put extra food out there for them, other supplemental feeding out there for them in what's called stump feeders. And I would put little chutes on the bottom so that whatever was in it wouldn't get on the ground and get all murky and messy. I'd put mineral blocks out there. I would put in the back, I had a bunch of 8 to 10 bird feeders, and I had 4 or 5 of the stump feeders that I was putting supplemental feeding in. And so the deer started to come, and I was happy about it. But still, something on the property, I saw things that made no sense to me. I saw things that is not normal to what I used to see. And all the animals where I grew up are the same as the animals are here. There's no bear here at this location. They have bear around other locations, but there's none here. But I saw things like, I saw this one trail after we cut bush hogged it in the back. This trail I'm 6'4" and really wide because I played football, and probably a foot from each shoulder, the trees and all were that far away from the trail. And I'm like, wow, that's not normal. You can look anywhere and you barely can get through it. And here's this trail that's like this. I go look at the trail. I can't figure out what's making this trail. This trail, whatever's been using it, has everything crushed. All the leaves are smashed flat on the ground. All the limbs and branches that have fallen are smashed and crushed. Now, a deer, when they step on a little twig or stick, it'll break it, but it's not going to smush it. This stuff had been smushed. And I started trying to think the only animal that I knew that could do stuff like that would be an elephant. I mean, it looked like a bunch of elephants would walk in a row and just crush everything as they step on it. But as far as I knew, in Georgia, they don't have any escaped elephants. So it's not that, but I couldn't figure out what was making the trail. Then on the other side of the creek, near the house, I had to go over there on that side, and I actually had to cut a bunch of trees down to get to the old pond. But on the other side, it was weird because remember, I said there's 10 to 12 foot banks, but they used a bulldozer to make a trail to ride over there. So the banks are about 10 foot tall on each side. But in the trail itself, on the other side, there's 3 logs. And each log is as big around as my waist, but they hadn't been cut. They looked like they had just been snapped and they were put flat on the ground. They weren't coming from the banks. They were all the way across, but they weren't coming from the banks. There was no root hole. I'm like, this is weird. Why would anybody want to block off this trail when there's nothing over here? And then why would they use a chainsaw or something? These had just been snapped, and there were 3 of them in a row that I had to move out of the way. And it took an effort to get them moved out of the way because they were super heavy. But it made no sense to me. I mean, I kept going, why would a person do this? Why would somebody do this? It made no sense. And when I finally got the trail made to the pond, the streams were blocked up. So what I decided to do was I decided to take water out of one of the streams, pump it over into the pond, and restock it. And that's a process. You take minnows in, then you take the brim in, then you take the bass in. And so I started stocking it with minnows. Now, for those that don't know, minnows lay their eggs on the bottom of wood, or these minnows did. They would leave their eggs on the bottom of tree limbs and stuff like that. And what happened was after we got it over there, there's an old open-sided barn over there next to that pond, and they used to make furniture. There was sawdust on the floor, and it had caught fire. So one day when I was driving up, I saw the smoke from over there, and I took 2 of the kids over there with me and saw what was going on, and I was trying to fight it. There was a big table that they would put lumber and stuff on and cut it. And I was using a rake, and I was raking it back under that table. And I had to run back to the house, get 2 buckets. I had to put one in the creek to get the water and another one up top to bring it from him to me, throw it on it, keep pushing it. And it was getting out of control. So I ended up having to call the fire department to help. Now, by the time they got there, I already had it under control. But at the time I called them, I didn't think it was going to happen that way. And it was going to get close to the roof. So when the firemen got there, they took this, and I couldn't figure out why the fire wasn't going through that table. It should have burnt right through it all the way to the roof, but it never did. Well, as we started breaking it apart, we realized that was an old tiny pool table that had slate in it. The slate was stopping it from burning through, but there were burning embers on the legs and sideboard and everything like that. So the firemen took all the sideboards and the legs, and they were heavy. Some were like 20 and 30 pounds, threw them into the pond. And one side would be burned, the other side wouldn't be burned. And so they were floating in the pond, no big deal. But then after a while, when the minnows were getting bigger, I was like, I need to get those out of there. They were spread out. They were within 3 foot of the bank, And there's really the way we have the water going in it, there's really no stream, there's no flow in it. So where they are, it didn't wash that way. It was put that way, but they were spread out in all the corners and the side within 3 foot of the bank. And the bird side was down on all of them, which was strange. But anyway, I wanted to get them out because I didn't want the guppies, the minnows, to try to lay the eggs on the bottom of them and it kill them, do something to them. So took all those heavy things. And the first one, when I rolled it over, it had leeches all over it. Big leeches. I would have to clean them off, put them in the boat. Hopefully the leeches wouldn't get on me and stick to me. Then go and throw them up against the bank. When they had made that with a bulldozer, there's a trail around it for a side-by-side or a four-wheeler to go on, and I was throwing it on the hill behind it. Take them all out and throw it there. The next weekend, when we would go to throw some food out for the minnows, they were back in the water. I'm like, what's doing this? Why is this stuff back in the water? And they were in all four corners and one on each side. And the burnt side was down. Now, I don't know if you know about wood or not, but the burnt side is the lighter side. The side that's not burnt is going to be the heavier side. So I didn't know why the burnt side was always down. At the very worst, you should have 50-50, burnt side up and the other side down. But all the time they were down. I would go back out there. I would take and pick them up, get all the leeches off of it, throw them back up on the bank. The next weekend, I go, they're back in the water again. Now, some of these things are 20 to 30 pounds. Some of them are 4 to 5 foot long because it was on a pool table on the side. So when I went back that time, I said, okay, I'm going to take these out one more time because this makes no sense to me. You got to have hands to be putting this in there, get it, to pick it up and put it back in there. Beaver aren't going to touch anything burned. They're going to touch fresh and growth of little trees. Raccoons aren't going to have anything to do with it. Nothing that I knew of would do it, throw it back in there, and whatever he's doing, it had to have hands. Put them in there a third time. Took them out a third time. And finally, after the third time, I said, bump it. I'm tired of fighting this. They can just stay in there. So I never at that time knew what was doing it. Then in December of 2019, my kids got me a cutout of a Bigfoot that was painted black. And I was always a cryptid lover. I always, wanted to watch the shows. They intrigued me. And honestly, I thought that there was a 50-50 chance because of all the sightings and witness encounters, and the Indians all had cave drawings along with other animals that were real. So why would they put Bigfoot with the other animals unless they were real? But I thought they were on the West Coast or up in Canada or Alaska. I never, ever thought that it possible that they could be here. So anyway, that gives you an idea of where my head was at the time. I was nowhere around thinking that Bigfoot could be here. But I'd seen all that stuff that made no sense. 2 weeks later, in January of 2020, my wife was watching a movie. Now, this was a scary movie. It was late at night. I don't like to watch scary movies. She loves to watch scary movies. They make me angry and make me want to hit the TV to kill whatever's trying to hurt people. I don't know why. That's just the way I'm wired. So I went to bed. About 1 a.m., she walks out on the back porch. It's nice and cool out there. She got too hot. She had the fireplace on. And so she wanted go out there and it'd be cool. She gets out there, and after just a minute or so, to the right of her, there is a super loud whistle. Now, this whistle, she used to, when people in high school, there were a lot of people that could whistle real loud, but she had never heard anything whistle this loud. And it was just out from where the light would reach. so you couldn't see it. It was probably 30 to 40 yards out. Then she didn't know what was going on. Now, we had dogs on the outside, and they were going crazy. We have them a nice big shed with a little heater and air conditioning in their couch, a little back deck on it with fenced in. They were jumping up and down on the fence, barking like crazy. And the only animal I'd ever heard whistle was a deer. But a deer wouldn't go that direction, because the next time it whistled, it had moved about 30 yards more in front of her, in between the bird feeder and the Bigfoot cutout, and it whistled again. Now, this time she thought it was one of the kids trying to play a prank on her, trying to scare her. So she said, "You're not going to scare me. Come back inside." The dogs are still barking, going crazy. Then it goes within 5 yards of the dog pen, where the dogs are jumping up and down, going crazy. No deer in rut or anything else would ever get within 5 yards of a fence that's got dogs jumping up and down on it. As soon as they would hear them start barking, they're going to take off the other direction. They want nothing to do with dogs. Then it went on down to the creek in the woods and gave one last long whistle down there. So then she knew it wasn't the kids. First off, there wasn't a flashlight. They would have had a flashlight. They would never go in the woods after dark, because they didn't grow up like I did and, familiar with the outdoors. So she ran in the house. She checked to see if all the kids were there, and sure enough, they were all asleep, every one of them. So she runs in there, wakes me up, and she says, come here. There's something out here. So I throw my shoes on. I go out there on the back porch. I listen. I don't hear anything. There's nothing there, but I know my wife doesn't lie to me, and she was in a panic. I don't think she was scared. It was more of confusion, because she had no idea what it was. Honestly, I didn't either, but it didn't freak me out, because I've been around wildlife long enough to know there's nothing really I can't handle in the outdoors. So, but I kept that in my mind, along with all the other stuff that I'd seen, and I kept processing it. Your mind is like a computer. It keeps processing things and wants to figure out what it is. 2 weeks later, after that, at 4:47 in the morning, something hit the brick wall. Our house is brick. Something hit the brick wall. We have a window on each side of the bed, and it hit in between those and in between us in the bed. And it hit so hard, the whole house shook. There was a picture on the wall that's about 20 pounds. As I'm quick to wake up. She never hardly wakes up. I open my eyes. I see the top of the picture going back, which means it went out first. Then the bottom comes out and goes back. Then it turns sideways. It almost knocked it off the wall. I'm like, holy cow, what in the world did that? And by the time my wife woke up, she goes, what was that? I said, I have no idea what that was. So I sat up on the side of the bed, and I'm going, okay, let me figure this out. What could do something like that? Well, sometimes if a jet does a sonic boom near your house and it's close enough and low enough, it can make the whole house shake. But this wasn't a sonic boom, because you hear the after effect of the jet wash. Didn't hear that. This was just a hit on the thing. I didn't hear the boom from it or anything like that. So I knew it wasn't that. Then I thought, well, what about an earthquake? And I said, no, I've been through an earthquake. That's like a wave in the ocean going under your house. And this, whatever this was, hit high up on the wall. And then I started thinking, well, the only other thing is a tree falling on your house, but the trees are too far away from the house right here to hit the house. And there's no storm outside. There's no lightning. There's no wind. I don't know what. I don't know what did it. But I got up, grabbed my iPad. I go into the bathroom because my wife, she's going back to sleep, and I don't want to disturb her by looking through stuff. So I looked through to see if anybody else reported anything weird that happened. Nothing. There was nothing weird reported anywhere else. So it wasn't like it was a big explosion somewhere that shook everybody's house, or they would have put it in there. So I said, well, I'm going to go back to sleep. I'm going to find out what it is the next morning. The next morning, I go outside and all the grass on the outside is patted down, flat. On the side of the brick wall, there is something had hit it and made a big circle, and all the dust and all the dirt was off of it in that section. And I'm like, what in the world? I'm 6'4", and whatever did that is 9 to 10 foot tall. Not 9 to 10 foot tall, but he hit 9 to 10 foot up on the wall. So I'm like, this doesn't make any sense. Something stood here, hit the house. I'm 6'4" with long arms, and I can't come close to touching where it had to hit. So I go back inside, and I think either right before I went out there, I pulled my iPad out, just kind of wondering. I said, let me put in Bigfoot in the town closest to us. And then something popped up. A story came across that did not show the location, but the story was talking about where a person saw a Bigfoot, and I could tell by what they were describing the roads and the stuff around it, that had to be close to us. It had to be really close to us. So I'm sitting there going, there must be the possibility there's a Bigfoot in this area. So let me call this Bigfoot expert that I know that's in North Georgia. Now, honestly, I don't believe anybody is an expert, true expert, because nobody really knows exactly what they are. But if there is one, he would be closest to it. Then I called him because I wanted to find out the person that wrote that report, because it was a BFRO report. I wanted to talk to them and see if I could find the location. That was my goal of calling him. Well, when I get him on the phone, then I realized he was in the BFRO. And when I told him the person's name, he said, no, we don't know where that person is. And so you really, that really wouldn't help. But can I ask you some questions? I said, yes, sure. He said, okay, tell me a little bit. So I was telling him about some of the things I'd seen and that made no sense. And then he said, okay. He said, do you have a lot of animals on the property? And then that's when I started telling him about the deer. Should be a deer haven. There wasn't that many deer. So I had to start putting food out for them, and deer, feeders with supplemental food and all kinds of fed the birds and everything else. He goes, oh, okay, so you put food out for the animal. Yes, I put food out for the animal. He goes, well, do you hunt? I said, no, I don't hunt. I used to hunt as a kid, but I don't hunt anymore because my dad always said, if you're going to shoot something, you better do it to get something to eat. And my wife would never eat a deer or another animal like that, much less cook it. So I'm not going to just go and shoot something to kill it. I'm just not going to do it. And I love to watch deer and other animals. So, no, we don't hunt. And then he said, well, do you have any fruit trees? I said, yeah, I planted a bunch of fruit trees. And I told him about all the ones I planted and stuff. And he goes, well, do you ever have any of your fruit missing? And I said, well, when I planted them, they were just real young. The only one that's made something is the peaches, but it's really weird because I have netting around it and on the ground, and fabric on the ground. And every time for 2 years, we've had some peaches on it. And during the week when they're getting ripe, I'll tell the family, hey, the peaches are getting ripe. So this weekend, we're going to go pick some and make a peach cobbler. Come Saturday, every peach is gone. No seeds, none on the ground. And some of these were 8 to 10 foot tall. And plus we had the netting around, which was away from it quite a ways and 6 foot high. And nobody where the house is, you can't see us from the road. We sit way back in the woods. So he said, okay. He said, you have any other fruit go missing? I said, yeah, our figs. I like to make fig preserves. I said, there'll be a bunch of figs getting ripe, and I'll go out there and they'll all be gone except for one or two that's half ripe. I said, our persimmon trees would make persimmons right off. So they must have, the way they did the plants. I said, and they go missing, and the deer aren't getting them because the deer can't get to them because of the deer netting around it. He said, okay. He said, so you feed the animals, you've had this stuff happen, you've got fruit going missing, you've got fruit trees, you're feeding animals, you're not hunting them. He said, I got a good idea of what's going on. I said, okay, well, what's going on? He said, you know what's going on. That's why you called me. You have a Bigfoot. I said, I've got a Bigfoot? And he said, yeah, you have a Bigfoot. I said, well, what are they trying to say? What are they trying to do? He said, they're letting you know they are there and want to cohabitate and live with you, coexist with you there at where you're at. Now that blew my mind. I'm like, I like to watch the stuff, but I really didn't know anything about Bigfoot at the time. And I was like, really? I said, how do you know that? He said, okay, well, let me ask you some more questions. I said, okay. He said, on your road, do you find trees pushed down across it a lot? I said, we've never had a tree pushed down across the road. I said, okay. He said, have you ever had anything run by your house in the middle of the night, hit it 2 or 3 times? No, we've never had that happen. Have you ever heard growls from the woods around your house when you're outside at night? No, we've never heard growls outside. Have you ever heard rocks or sticks or something being thrown on your roof, at your house, or on the barn nearby? No, never heard it. He said, if they didn't want you there, that's what they would be doing. He said, they're just letting you know that they're there. They evidently have been watching you and see that you're friendly to the animals, you're nice people because of all the stuff that you're doing. And so they want to coexist with you. Well, that kind of blew my mind. I'm like, okay. And then we kind of ended the conversation, and I'm like, all right. So I'm the type of person that goes by the motto, trust but verify. I trusted what he said, but I wanted to verify what he said. So after a little bit of thinking, I was like, this was after a while, after a few weeks, I was like, what can I do to try to find out if they're really here? So what I decided to do is that one big trail that they had walked on and smushed everything down, I was going to go put 2 headless nails in a tree and stick red apples on it. I was going to stick them up as high as I could and find a tree that really didn't have any limbs on it for other things to get to it. So what I did is I stuck a red, delicious apple on each one of the nails. Then I raked off underneath it. Now, the leaves and all were so thick that it didn't get to the dirt, but it got to the soft, wet leaves underneath it, which compress easy. So I go down there. The next time I go down there, and I believe it was the next day, but it could have been 2 days later, the apples are gone. That's good. I looked, and there it was. In the leaves, there was an impression of a human-like foot, 16 to 16 and a half inches long. And I have my answer. So we do have Bigfoot. Bigfoot is here. So at the time, I thought that Bigfoot, like most people think, Bigfoot's just a normal everyday animal. So I decided, okay, well, I'm going to try to, this is unique. I'm going to try to find out how we can communicate and learn about them because nobody really does. And if I can earn their trust and let them know that I'm willing, maybe I can learn more about them and everything to find out, you know, all about them, find out as much as I can. So I kept putting apples out there and they kept disappearing. And so I was trying to think, I need them to interact with me. So down there near where I was putting the apples out, I had a stump feeder. Now the stump feeder was level and on the top it had the rings. And I said, I'm going to gift them some blue marbles. I saw a show one time where they were talking about them liking blue marbles. So I'm going to put some blue marbles up there to give them as a gift. And it's within probably 15, 20 yards of where I'm putting the apples. So I put the blue marbles up there. That was on a Sunday. And I think the next Saturday when I went down there, the marbles were gone. I'm like, this is great. They're not on the ground. They're all gone. So I went and told my wife, she wanted to see it. So we drive down there. Sure enough, they're gone. Now to go down there, it makes a big U by just kind of the way that the stream is and everything. My wife does all the mowing. Thank goodness. I got her a real nice zero turn so she can do the mowing. It relaxes her. She loves to mow. So we're going around that U, and when we get to start going up on the northernmost side, there is a huge river rock on the left-hand side of the trail. This thing's got to weigh 100 pounds. And there's another one that weighs about 60 to 80 pounds on the right side of the trail, right next to it. My wife stops and looks at them and she goes, where did these come from? I said, I have no idea where those came from. You know, they're huge. She goes, they weren't there when I was mowing. And if you can imagine, you know, they're not just going to jump out of the stream when it's got 10 to 12 foot banks, but here they are. At the time, I was not thinking that these could be a gift back to us for the blue marbles. Because everything I'd seen, it was like they weave twigs together. It's a feather, it's flowers, you know, it's something like that. Nobody ever said they were going to leave you a boulder as a gift. So we go to my mom's house, stay there. On the way back, my wife's asleep and my little brain's just going crazy. I said, wait a second. That might be a gift because the marbles are hard like a rock. They're just pretty colored. And so they may have given us those rocks as a gift back. So we get home late Sunday night. I go to work Monday morning, but this is eating at me. I'm going to find out. I'm going to go look at them again and find out. So instead of going the U, I cut right through the middle so I could get there quicker because I was already going to be late to work. As I drive around where they were, they're gone. Those big river rocks were gone. They weren't there. I'm like, what the heck is going on? So I go up the trail, up the trail, and by the peach tree that they liked the most, where she had recently mowed and was level, there the big one was, sitting right there by that peach tree. I said, that's crazy. That thing has moved 50 yards, 50 to 60 yards up the trail, right by that peach tree where she just mowed. And I was like, I wonder where the other one is. So I went all the way around the U, and we had made a parking area for the kids, had to bring in a ton of dirt to make it because it was really steep going down to the creek. It was several hundred loads of dirt we had to do to make a pad that they could park. So it was 8 foot from the top of the pad to where the trail was beside it. So there was like an 8-foot drop. And there was the other one, the other rock beside the trail over there, and another rock just like it on the other side of the trail. I'm like, holy cow. They moved these to make sure that we saw them and knew it was a gift because they want to make sure we accept their gift back. So we did. We took the gifts, we put them by the steps on our porch so that they knew that we had accepted their gifts. And I think that was a big thing that happened to lead into everything else. But another thing that they did at that time is when I was putting apples on the tree, I started thinking, something's got 16-inch foot and it's wider than ours. I've got a huge foot. Mine's 13 and a half foot long, 5.5 inches wide. And this one makes mine look like a baby print because of the width of it. I said, they probably want more apples. And I'm thinking to myself, I was looking around, where can I put some more? I could not find anywhere to put some more. So when I go back the next time, I look, and on the other side of the fence, it's right there. There is a vine that goes up vertically, then it goes horizontal for about a foot, then it goes up vertically into a tree. Whereas horizontal, there are 4 sticks poked in the ground from different angles and look like a teepee. And the way the teepee makes a cup on top of it. So I said, and what was weird is that they all were the same height. They were broken off the same height, not pointed, just snapped off even. And I'm like, I could put one here. And when I put an apple in it, it hit it like 3/4 of the way. And I said, oh, that's good. I'm going to see how smart they are because they're going to have a hard time finding this one. So I go back the next day, the apple's gone. I was impressed. I'm like, man, they're smarter than I thought they were. They found 2 and they found this one also. And then I looked around and to the left, right next to the fence, there is another one just like it. And I said, whoa, wait a second. I know that one wasn't there. So I started looking at it and I realized it had been made. When I pulled it out of the ground, the sticks were 3 to 4 inches deep and they were sharp into the ground, but they all were broke off even on top and they were snapped off even. It wasn't pointed on all of them. Each one had four sticks, but they were angled onto something that would hold it up to make a cup on top to put an apple. I was amazed. I'll be honest with you though, at first I was a little insulted because here I am trying to test if they can find this apple. They not only find it, but they're the ones that made the holder. I put it right where they wanted me to. So I felt like I lost that match. They're smarter than me on that time because I did exactly what they wanted me to do. But it was amazing that they made that. So then I decided to take it a step further. Let's see if we can start interacting and communicating with them. We gifted them the blue marbles, but we didn't really interact with them. They just took them and did with them whatever they wanted to do. Probably the little ones playing games with it like our little kids would do. So I took a clear pie plate, put some extremely white aquarium sand in it, and then took 8 blue marbles and made a smiley face and put it on that stump feeder that again is level. And I said, let's see if we can somehow start using figures to communicate. You go down there the next time. All the marbles are pulled to the bottom of the plate. Now, it hadn't rained. It looked like I saw a fingertip print on one, but you're not sure. The others couldn't see fingertip prints. We made a smiley face again. Go back the next time, they're at the bottom of the plate again. They all were there, but they were just pulled to the bottom of the plate. So we made another smiley face. Go back the next time, they're at the bottom of the plate. I think we did it 4 times. We made a smiley face and pulled it to the bottom of the plate. And I'm like, this ain't getting anywhere. I don't know what's doing this. I don't know what's happening, but I'm done playing this game. But we left it down there. We go back down probably 2 weeks later, or maybe not that much. It may have been 1 week. Guess what? We had left them at the bottom of the plate, and now there was a smiley face. Were playing a game with me and pulling them to the bottom of the plate, and we were doing it back. And then when we quit, they made a smiley face because now they want to start interacting with us. They want to play and interact with us. I thought that was really neat. So what we did was I decided we would start doing something different. We'd make different shapes and see what they would do with it. And one of the ones that really amazed me is I took a square. I had 3 blue marbles on top. There were 2 dark blue ones on the top left and top right. The one in the middle was a lighter blue. 3 down on the bottom row. And then in the middle, in between the rows on each side, 1. So there were 6 marbles. I went down there the next time. They had made that square into a smiley face. But they don't think the way we do. They didn't do it how we would do it. Most people, including myself, you're going to take and pick them up and make a smiley face. They took the one in the middle top that was a lighter blue, slid it down to make a nose. They took the 2 on each side and slid them out. They took the middle one in the bottom and slid it down a little bit. In 4 moves, they took a square, made it a smiley face. How crazy is that? And I will tell you a story also about something that happened a little later on because it also had to do with the pop plate. So one night, I was going to the bathroom, and the bathroom is right next to the porch. And if I hear the dogs barking, I will open the door to see if I can hear howls or tree knocks or what's going on. Sometimes you're going to hear coyotes, owls, different things. And the dogs started barking at the edge of the woods, and they were following it. And I could tell they were following it, and it was coming right to the right of the back porch is a stump feeder up in the corner, and deer were up there a lot. So in my mind, I'm thinking that there's something going down that road, and they're following it up that road because they would sound the same as if it was coming to the deck. All of a sudden, the door is open. On the back deck, something goes, wham! I was like, what in the world? It was like, that's a rock that hit the back porch. But that's close the door. That's too close. I don't know. I knew what did it. Honestly, I knew what did it, but that's just too close. Because the whole bathroom shook and the back porch shook. Then the next day, I called somebody in North Georgia that also knows a lot about Bigfoot. Told him what happened. I said, it doesn't make sense. Something hit the back porch. I know by the sound it was a rock. I said, but it wasn't thrown. I know Bigfoot throws them, but this did not have a skip or a bounce on the back porch. This was a rock slamming it. When I went out and looked the next morning, you could see where the rock slammed it and some of the sand that came off the rock where it hit. But there was no rock there. So I explained to him what happened, and he goes, yeah. He goes, probably what happened was there was one going hunting solo, and he has a throwing rock. Usually when they go out to hunt by themselves, they'll take a throwing rock so they can hit a raccoon in a tree, or they can hit something on the ground that's quicker than them to stun it and go grab it. So it probably hit it with a throwing rock and took it with them. I said, oh, okay. Well, that makes sense. So I'm just thinking about, why would they do that? Why would they hit the back porch like that to get my attention? In my mind, I was thinking it was an adult. I was thinking that this is an adult that hit it. The next time we go down to the marble plate, you wouldn't believe it. They made a picture of the house. I went back to where they stood to hit it, and it looks exactly the same as the picture they made with the blue marbles to let me know that they hit the house. And then nearby, probably 4 or 5 foot from it, they left the throwing rock, which was really neat in itself because it actually looks like you can see their fingerprints in this rock, which was crazy. But they left that as a gift. But so the only thing I could think of is I had the door open. They saw the light, could smell me in there, and they knew my smell because I'd go and handle all the apples and stuff. And they wanted to come say hi to me. And, it's a weird way to do it, but maybe that was just the way they wanted to do it. But then they go and they make a picture to let me know it was them and then leave me a gift with the throwing rock. I thought that was really crazy. So they did use that to interact with us and to communicate with us in ways. Now, at this time, again, I'm still thinking this is just a normal forest animal. So I decided that I would go ahead and make a feeding station for them. I would put 4x4s in the ground, put a roof on it, put a deck on it, and I put stuff out for them to eat because at the time I was like, let me see how they eat things, how they do things. My whole premise of doing this was to learn about them, and knowing what I know now, I would never have done that. Now, we've not had anything negative happen from putting food out for them, but some people have. Now, we don't put it out all the time, but they do let us know whenever it's out. They don't hit the house. They don't yell or scream. They don't do anything crazy, but we've got like a tripod deer feeder that's black, and then we don't put things in anymore because it kept getting stopped up real easy. But when it was out, they would tip it over, and it would be right by our driveway. So they were letting me know that there's no food down there, and that's the way they would let me know. Or a few times they would take the bird feeders. I made the bird feeders with metal pipes with blocks on the bottom of it, and they would push the bird feeder over. And a couple of times, a couple of bird feeders got broke, but that's no big deal. I just stand it back up, but I got the message. I knew what they were saying, that, hey, there's no food down here. Can you give us some more food? But then that was pretty neat. But what I started learning all kinds of things from them. Number one, I would put a whole box of peanut butter crackers out. They would take the peanut butter crackers. Now, these were the Lance peanut butter crackers. And in the top, it's got like a little hole so you can see them down in there. Now, the way people eat them is we open up the ends of them and pull it out the end. They don't do it that way. They stick their hand in that little hole and rip it to the side and pull it out the side. Not only that, but their hands and fingers are so strong, they pull it from the middle sides and it just splits open. Where we would take it from the ends and tear it, they would just pull it from the sides and it rip open. I said, that's crazy. Then on jars of peanut butter, they would take jars of peanut butter, take the lid off, throw it down. They would take the label off because the label's got bright colors on it. And then they would take the jar and all, and the jar would be gone, just disappear. No idea where it's going. In the beginning, I saw that some raccoons were getting up there, and raccoons are real ambidextrous with their fingers, with their paws. They can use them like hands. And I didn't want to misidentify anything. So I put steel around the legs and then a top on it that they can't climb over just to eliminate the raccoon. There weren't any trees far enough away they could jump on top of it. So I was just trying to eliminate possibilities. That's just the kind of things that I do because I want to know what's doing it. But it was the peanut butter being the color it is, they can carry it in the woods and it's the color that cause a problem. But if somebody sees the bright labels on it or the blue top or the red top, then it draws attention. So they were taking it off. But one of the other things I found was I put out a bunch of peanut butter jars, and the jars would always go missing at the beginning. The only place I found any in the woods, and I don't go in every area. There's some areas where I know that they stay. I leave it to them. That's part of that building the trust with them. I want them to trust me, and they want to trust. We want to trust each other. So that's part of the building the trust. And I have found a couple of them in the woods where a trail would go down to the stream, but they were on top of the bank, which was 8 to 12 foot tall. So they're using them as drinking cups, I believe, because the only ones I found have been on the trails going down to the creek. How smart's that? They're not only eating all the peanut butter, but then after they eat it, they're dipping it in the creek and drinking out of them like we would a cup. But one time there was a little one that evidently didn't know how to eat the peanut butter out. Now the deck was 4 foot off the ground. So you had to be a small one to be able to sit underneath it. I found a peanut butter jar underneath it where one was sitting, was ripped down like a banana. There's no teeth marks on it. There's no claw marks on it. It has not been done with scissors. It has not been done with pliers, but it was ripped down like crazy so they could get the peanut butter out of the bottom of it. So evidently they hadn't taught that one how to eat the peanut butter all the way out. I'll find out that the big ones, the older ones, like the peanut butter the most because of the high protein in it. But anytime I go on an expedition or go with other people, I take an empty peanut butter jar. No one yet has been able to rip it down even once. And this thing is just ripped down like crazy. So also I put in big tubs, like you put wrapping paper in, the big, long, clear tubs. It's got little grooves around the bottom. And I would put dog food in it. And I learned earlier they like dog food. And I'll tell you that story right now. I had a 35-pound bag of dog food on the back porch. And the dogs don't eat that much dry food because they're spoiled. They get a lot of pepperonis and all the good stuff, and they quit eating all the dry food, so it takes them a while to get to it. So it was on the back porch. We had security cameras on our back porch in our driveway. And all of a sudden, it had been out there a couple of weeks. All of a sudden, I go out there on a Sunday, and the bag is gone. The 35-pound bag of dog food gone. I'm like, what the heck? So I go to look at the cameras. The cameras went dead Friday night. The batteries went dead on it. Now, within 48 hours, probably 24 to be honest with you, but within 48 hours of those cameras going dead, they went and took that dog food, it was chicken flavored dog food, off the back porch to eat it. You know what their guilt back in return for was? Going into the trail where I'd put apples and over by the pump, and on our trail, they left some monster poops. They would leave me some real life fertilizer to replace the dog food. I thought that was crazy. And no, I did not get them for DNA. No, I did not touch it. I did not accept that guilt. I was like, nope, not going to do it. But I can tell you that the first one I saw was about a foot long or a little longer. And if you take a Pringles can and about 3/4 of the dimension, that's how big around it was. Your toilet would be stopped up for 2 or 3 days with that. I mean, it was huge. I had a guy that would help at the pond because the pump would get stopped up sometimes from the creek when a lot of rain came through. And he called me one day and he goes, "Hey, have you got any like real big dogs out here on the property or something? Over here by the pump, there's some 2 or 3 huge poops, biggest I've ever seen in my life." Said, no, we don't have any dogs out there. He said, well, on the way back, there was one left in the middle of the trail that was still steaming. Just shook my head and said, no, I think I know what's doing it. But at that time, he didn't know about them. He does now because he's seen enough. But they were leaving us poop for dog food. But anyway, so I learned they like dog food. I also, anyway, I would put the dog food in this huge plastic container that you put Christmas wrapping paper in. I put I think a 14-pound bag of dog food in it. And what I found was the little crumbs in the bottom edges, they lick their fingers and eat it like we would potato chips. You know how potato chips, those last little crumbs are the saltiest and best taste, and we lick our fingers and pick them up and eat them? Well, they eat the crumbs out of it that way also, because I kept finding little fingertip prints around the edges when it was almost gone. I even found one time, now again, the base of this is level because the guy that does the pump made it, and he's a perfectionist. He makes sure everything is exactly level. That had been tipped, so all the crumbs went into one corner, and evidently it had licked all 4 fingers and gone in the corner, because you could see in the corner where there were 4 fingers in the corner in the crumbs where they were licking it off of it. And I thought that was pretty neat because they're doing something like we would do. But anything that was in a wrapper, they would always pull it from the side and rip it open. They would never do it from the ends. There was a lot of things they would do different. Oh, applesauce. Applesauce, they would take applesauce, stick a hole in it, and I don't know if they would lick it out or take their finger and lick their finger and get it out. But they loved the applesauce. But I don't know how it was cleaned out every time. As if you had not only ate it all, but washed it out clean. That's how clean it was. So they would do that too. And I can tell you also, they let us know on certain occasions what flavor they like. So one Christmas, they had changed it. Let me go back just a little bit. When we first got there were 4 of them. There was an adult male, an adult female, a juvenile, and a young one. Now, the reason I know that is but when we built the trust with them, they quit hiding their footprints. So I can tell you the dimensions of their footprints. The juvenile was weird because the juvenile only had 4 toes, but it was real narrow. It was like 9.5 inches. The adult male was 19.5 inches and 10.5 inches wide. The adult female at the time was like 13.5 inches, 8 inches wide. Now it's 14.5, 8.5 inches wide. And the little one was about 6.5 inches long and about 3 inches wide, 3 to 4 inches wide. So there were 4. All of a sudden, they started marking their trails again. They like to mark their trails with things that are light colored because they can see them better at night. And it made no sense to me. Why are they marking their trails? They found some white PVC pipe from somewhere, and they were 10 foot long. They put them on the ground. One was pointing at the gifting station where we put the food, and another one was pointing at the big trail where you go, where I put the apples at. Then on other trails, I saw where they had the big PVC pipe. Then I saw one that was actually leaning up in a bush. Now, this one was about 4 foot long, but it was pointing up in there. So I went and I looked, and they were marking danger. There was a hornet's nest just inside the woods in the tree that it was pointing at. So not only were they marking trails, but they were marking danger. Now, I forgot to say it, but we had a couple of people come there. They actually found out that when they hit our house, that they actually broke the bricks from the top of my wife's window all the way to the roof. Just cracked all the way up. The hit was so hard. They found footprints, tree breaks, things tied together. trees tied together, all kinds of stuff. So they had found a lot of stuff like that. But anyway, they were marketing it. All of a sudden, I start seeing the male, by the way, comes and goes. He's not here all the time. The male will be here 2 to 3 weeks when the adult female has a baby to take care of, getting food and protect them all while she's taking care of the baby for 2 to 3 weeks. The mature females here all the time, and then the young ones were there all the time. But I started seeing the mature female, and I started seeing 2 to 3 juveniles and 2 babies and a young one or so. And I'm like, wait a second. Well, what's going on here? Then I called my buddy that I talk to a lot all the time, and he said, yeah, you now have a nursery. And I said, what? He said, they have made your place a nursery. It's a safe zone for them. There's plenty of food. They trust you and respect you. So they have made your location a nursery where the mature mom takes care of them and has the juveniles as helpers to take care of the babies. I said, that's crazy. All of a sudden, I started hearing blue jays on the property like crazy. Now, the blue jays, where I grew up, there were blue jays, but we had never had blue jays here. We'd have bluebird, but not blue jays. I'm hearing blue jays everywhere. And I will let you know that every time I walk out of the house, I've got blue jays sounding off. That when I've got windows open on the inside, you can't hear any blue jays until I walk out. Or I got crows sounding off when I walk out. Now, the crows don't fly off like they normally would when they're scared. It's like they're watching me. It's like they're lookouts. And they let them all know when I come out of the house, which is really kind of neat too. They have their own lookout system. But when they made a nursery going into the winter, I wanted to put some extra protein out there because I realized that their eating habits changed to more protein heavy stuff than sweet stuff. Because I would put honey graham crackers out. I would put Nutter Butters out, all kind of different stuff. And one container was always had 2 or 3 types of different cereal in it. So I had another plastic bin and I put dog food in it. And I had tried salmon because they really love fish. They go in and out of the pond all the time. And so I'm like, I tried salmon one time and they really like the salmon. So I started putting salmon flavored dog food in the first 2 bins and then the cereal in the other one, then the other stuff. And again, we didn't do that all the time. They didn't have food down there all the time. So just to let you know, I couldn't afford that even if I wanted to. I can barely afford doing what we were doing to learn from them. But anyway, so I was putting 2 bags of salmon. Well, I go to Walmart one day, and Walmart's got 1 bag of chicken and 1 bag of salmon. So they don't have 2 bags of salmon. So I did pick a salmon and a chicken, put them in the first 2 containers, and then put the stuff out. The next morning, now, when I would go put stuff out for them, I would drive the side by side into the barn, and there's a trash can outside of it. I would put all the trash in it. And the trash can was empty when I put it in it. It's one of those huge trash cans you put by the road. I'm as tall and long as that arm as I am. I can't reach to the bottom of it. And the bags that I put in there were in the bottom. I go out to my car. I start to get in my car. And right where I step to get into my car is the salmon flavor dog food bag. Yeah, that's right. It's right where I step. So I said, wait a second. They're sending me a message. They want salmon. They don't want chicken. They want salmon. But I had to verify that. So I go get the side by side and run down there. And sure enough, the salmon was ate almost down to the bottom and they hadn't hardly touched the chicken. They were letting me know that they wanted salmon flavored dog food and not chicken. They found ways to let me know what they want. Isn't that neat? I mean, isn't that crazy how they find ways to let you know stuff like that? So we've had so many interactions with them, and there were learning curves that had to go on both sides. One of the learning curves was we had to find out what they didn't want us to do. We had to let them know what we didn't want them to do, which was basically looking in our windows, hitting our house, killing our dogs, or being bad to our dog. We actually, one night we heard coming home real late at night from work, we heard a dog sounded like it was attacking something on the other side of the creek, and then it got grabbed. We always have our windows open when we drive onto the property so we can see deer. And we just got water in the middle of the field and we can hear all the frogs and stuff. So we like hearing it. We get down there and something has this dog, and it is the most horrifying thing I've ever heard. It was being ripped apart, made an example out of, and my wife drove off the driveway, honked the horn, yelled out the window, "Stop that." Immediately, the sound stopped. There was not another single sound. It evidently, when she said that, broke its neck. But it was literally ripping that dog apart. So what happened was we think that the dog, it was a wild dog, was attacking one of the young ones or one of the babies, and one of the adults or juveniles grabbed the dog and was making an example out of it. But we went and checked on our dogs because it scared us to death. We're like, oh my gosh, we don't want to do this with our dog. So I went down there, and I had learned that if I say stuff out loud, and sometimes even in my head, they understood what I was saying. And I think that's why they made the place to put an apple, because in my head I was saying, I wish I had another place to put an apple. I'm sure they did too. So they made the apple holders. But then again, I tell people, I said, they could have been just seeing me look around and figured that out. But there's so many other things that have happened that I know they can understand what we're saying, and they understand what I'm thinking. They understand my thought. And I could go over example out of that because I actually did test on it. And 9 out of 9, I would ask them to do something if they got the message and they would do it. This was in my mind. This is just in my thoughts. I would say something like, hey, I want to know if you can read my thoughts. I'm putting this branch over here on this. If you can read my thoughts, take the branch and put it on the ground. Well, they do things in their own way. And the thing I told them to put it on, I actually had made it in the beginning to get fingerprints. So I did one time I was doing the fingerprints and they understood what I was doing. They never went in it again. I had a lid and I was going to put food in it so I can get fingerprints off the top. I had polyurethane all over it. But to make a long story short, they picked the stick up and put a feather underneath it instead of taking it and putting it on the ground to let me know they got the message. Or I would say something like, I give them a message and say, hey, I'm down here and I'm about ready to leave. If you can understand what I'm thinking, give me a tree knock. All of a sudden there'll be a tree knock. Or there would be I would say, give me a sign, give me some kind of localization that do a Yahoo or a Whoop or something. So it was 9 out of 9 on it. So I knew they could. And one thing that was really neat one time is my wife and I were down at the pond, and the adult female loved to go into the pond. Here, this print is where she had stepped out of the pond and her wet feet had picked up all the leaves. But yeah, the ground is so hard that it did not leave an impression. And when you take a picture with a camera, it's flat. It's not 3D. I can see and know it's a Bigfoot print. Take a picture with a camera and people say you're a fake, you're a forgery because this is nothing but bare dirt. Well, the camera doesn't take it in 3D. They not looking at what I was looking at. Not only that, but I'd seen other prints leading to it. So that's one of the things. But all of a sudden, behind one of the hills where the bulldozer pushed up some dirt on that occasion, I heard a tree branch snap. And this was a big tree branch. This was about half as big around as a big person's wrist would be. And I will let you know, by me being in the woods so much as a kid, I can tell you what is a natural tree break and what's not. And I'll kind of let you know how. Number one, if a branch breaks in a tree, you will hear it falling through the limbs and then hitting the ground. When they break it, they hold on to it. Or once in a while, they'll throw it near you if they're trying to get you to leave or something. Now, they're deadly accurate with a rock or a branch. If they wanted to hit you, they could, but it never hits the ground. When they break it, it never hits the ground. Not only that, but they don't take dead limbs and break them. They break live limbs or ones that have just come off to make a sharp, crisp snap. So you can tell if a Bigfoot is doing a branch break compared to something natural. And people that say that you can't, they're wrong. You can. It's totally different. Anyway, the tree branch snaps. So I just got done telling my wife, I wish they would give us some better prints so we could take better pictures. All of a sudden, after the tree branch broke, I said, well, I guess they got the message, and we just kind of laughed. Now, this thing was only 25 to 30 yards away from us, but we're not in fear of them. We trust them. They actually will have helped us in certain situations, protecting us. And so we're not afraid of them at all. But I said, I guess I got the message. Now, in the middle of the week, one day when I take the trash cans out, I went down to the gifting station, and there on the ground in this hard packed clay is her print pressed down really hard to where it indented into the ground. And she took a blue marble that was under the gifting station. And that's a whole nother story in itself, where one of the things I asked them to do if they got the message is do something with the marble plate. And at the gifting station, it's got a little slit in between it. It took the plate and just dropped it down in that little slit in the woods as if you were putting a coin in a slot machine. And all the blue marbles had sand all over it underneath it. She had taken a blue marble down, off the ground, wiped it off and put it in the middle of her footprint as if to say, here's your print. So that's the kind of stuff that really was crazy. One time, the pond has water pumping out of it out of the stream into the pond. The electric box for it is in the open sided barn. So one time he had to go work on it, and he wanted to turn the power off, but he called me and said, hey, there's thousands of bees. There's thousands of bees and stuff flying around in here. I can't get to the power to shut it off. And if I can't shut it off, then I can't do anything. So I had him start describing what was going on. He said, under the sawdust, there evidently was a tarp. It's been pulled back, and there's a bowling ball size hole under there, and they're coming out of the ground. And he described them to me. And in my head, the only thing I could think of was Yellow Jacket. That's the only thing I could think of. He got into a Yellow Jacket hole. So I said, go get some stuff and just spray them and kill them. So he went and got several cans and killed them. On the side of the pond, 2 days later, when we went back down there, there were two 40-foot trees pushed into the pond. And I knew that they had done it. Nothing else could do that. We had tried to pull the trees with a four-wheeler and couldn't get it to do anything to them. And here they are, both pushed into the pond. And one didn't hit the other one. They were pushed in separately or at the same time with really long arms. So I was like, this doesn't make any sense. We had to do something wrong to upset them. What happened? So I go look. I remember inside the barn. So I go look in the barn in that bowling ball size hole, and there's another one back behind it. And the one back behind it had a part of a honeycomb. And I said, there it is. I said, they knew that these honeybees had honey down here. They knew this tarp was here. They pulled this tarp back, and when I went back and looked at the picture, you can actually see the fingers where it stretched the tarp, where they pulled it up. They reached and grabbed the honeycomb and went to take it off to eat it. But we had killed their honey production. So they were upset at us because they would leave and go somewhere else and make honey, probably out of like normally a stump or a tree hole or something like that. But they were mad at us because we killed their honey production. And you know, some good honey sometimes really tastes good. And so I'm sure it had upset somebody. I had to take the side-by-side full power and the four-wheeler full power for us just to drag those trees out of the pond. I mean, they were huge. Like I said, they were 40 foot tall. So they were letting me know things not to do. And I would let them know things not to do. Just to let y'all know, I've seen 4, and I have a real high standard of seeing things. In other words, whenever for me to call it a sighting, I've got to see a face, I've got to see hair, or at the very minimum, got to know 100% it's not any other animal. And if it doesn't meet that criteria, I don't call it a sighting. I've got some that I have pictures of in trees looking at me or in the woods looking at me, where I zoomed in on it and I can see a face peering at me and stuff like that. I don't call that a sighting. But I've had 4 that I'm 100% on that it's a sighting. And then I've got 3 that were babies, or I think they were babies that I'm 90% on. I've got to be above 95% to know, or 100% to know that it can't be anything else. And the babies move like a chimpanzee. So I don't call that a sighting, even though they have been playing with our dogs. And I've got to finish that story because I started and never finished it. But it was playing with a couple of our dogs where our dog would chase it and then it would chase our dogs. And I saw it running around in the backyard right at dusk. I couldn't figure out. I said, what kind of animal's injured to where it makes it run like that? And then on the second time I saw it, I realized that's not an animal. Whatever that is moving like a chimpanzee. So it was a baby chasing the dog and stuff like that. But I'd seen 2 chasing the dogs, and I'd seen 1 sliding down off of the gifting station. It would get up on the platform, and it slid down like a little kid would off of the platform onto the ground, go on all 4s, and go around it back on a trail where there's a huge vine that goes up into a really tall tree that they would go up into for safety. But let me get back to the dog story. So the Bigfoot killed this dog. We went down after that and told them that if they killed our dogs or hurt our dogs, that is a trust breaker for us. They're part of our family. And we want you to never hurt them or anything, never hurt them. All of a sudden, we had 2 dogs that were on the inside. They started every morning and every night going to the gifting station. One of them was a pit bull, which we ended up having to put him outside because when he started wanting to eat the furniture, that guy would be a little too expensive to keep him in the house. So he ended up having to go in the pen outside. Now we just have the little Yorkie. What a pair they were, a white bulldog and a little bitty Yorkie. And the Yorkie thought he was a boss. But the white pit bull would come back and have pit marks on it, dirty fingerprints on it. Then I would start finding peanut butter wrappers. I'd see a Bigfoot footprint going up to the fence, empty peanut butter wrappers And then I'd see crumbs on the other sides where they were feeding the dogs peanut butter crackers. I'm like, how crazy is that? Then I started seeing the little one, the little Yorkie, playing with the little babies, the babies. And I said that that's really neat because they have made a concerted effort to befriend the dogs so that they could meet what we wanted them to do. There was one time that I took my mom to the doctor during the middle of the day, and they watch you all the time. They pattern you. They're great at patterning you, but they're watching you all the time. And this was on 2:00 in the afternoon. We were coming back from the doctor. And as I'm going by the field, I saw something in the woods that I think the windows were still rolled down, but I saw something in the woods, got my camera, turned it on camera because there in the woods on the other side, about 65 yards away, is a face. It's shiny, like as if somebody had armor all their dashboard. Now it's a light tan and the hair around it's dark black. So it stood out like crazy, and I took a picture of it. Again, I did not call that a sighting. I can zoom it in and see it, but I did not call that a sighting because I wasn't close enough to meet my criteria. But then a few months later, maybe 2 to 3 months later, I'm sitting in the living room and I started seeing little prints come into our window. We had a bay window. They would look in the back window and start watching TV. And so I was sitting on the couch, had fallen asleep. It was about 2 a.m. All of a sudden, I wake up. I look over there at the little Yorkie, and he's standing up on the arm, staring at the window, not barking, not raising cane, nothing, just staring at the window. And I'm like, what are you staring at? I looked over there in the window, and in the front window that I can see, which is only about 7 yards from me, is the face of the one that I saw in the woods looking in the window. Now, we had relatives come into the house in a few weeks, and some of them were going to have to sleep in that room. I didn't want to freak them out. So I went outside, and they had scrambled. They're super quick. They can move. I told them, I said, I don't go in your bedroom and look in the house. I don't expect you to look in our windows. And then the next day I saw why that one was in the front window, because there was another one in the back window that had fresh prints going there, and that one was in the front window. But believe it or not, they never come looked in the window again. Never saw any more prints. So I would set the parameters on it. The things that bothered us, they would set parameters on things with us that we wouldn't do. I can tell you they do not want us to take casting of prints. They do not want us to take pictures of them. What else? Oh, I can hear them sometimes coming down trees or coming towards the gifting station when I'm putting stuff out because they really like certain things. Everybody's got their own little things that they like a lot. And sometimes they would start coming before I'd even leave because they wanted to get some of the salty sweet granola bars or honey graham crackers or something that they really liked. And they wanted to get there first to get their fair share. They don't want me running in the woods to get a look at them. So I don't. I would hear them coming down, coming through the woods, coming across the creek. They would stop just far enough away that I couldn't see them. I get done, I get in the side by side and say, okay, I'm done. You can go ahead and come on. And I would go in the house, knowing that they were going to come, but I never would make a move at them. And one of the reasons why is I heard we had a mama with twins one time, and her print was like 17 inches long. She was dropping them off. And the twins were both like 5 inches long. They were twins, so they were the same. And I saw the twins' prints everywhere. One day I heard the twins coming up down the fence, coming over to it, but they were talking to each other. So I had snuck in the woods and tried to turn my phone on a video so I could record them talking to each other. As they got about 20 yards away, one behind me did a tree knock so loud that it actually blocked it from doing the sound on the phone because it was so loud. They were letting me know, no, don't try to see the little ones and stuff like that. Don't do it. So that's how I learned that they don't want that to happen. But the only reason I was doing it at that time is because I never really heard them communicate back and forth. And I was really interested in how they were communicating and stuff back and forth. They probably were talking about what they were going to take first and stuff like that, making deals or something. I don't know, but they were gabbing away. And that's not the first time we heard it. We did hear some adults in there one time that were talking back and forth in the woods. And it was very similar to the Sierra sounds. It really sounded like people, but it wasn't people because you couldn't understand it. And one was a deeper voice and one was you could tell it was a higher tone voice, probably a juvenile female, I would guess. So we would set parameters, and the parameters that we've said have really worked out great for us. When I do something wrong, don't think you're too old to be put in timeout. Because when I do something wrong, they start hiding their footprints again for 1 to 2 weeks. I have to apologize and tell them I won't do it again. And then after a week to 2 weeks, they'll start leaving their footprints again. And they know I love footprints. And they leave all kinds of gifts. When they were looking in the window at the TV, we had a arrowhead collection next to the TV. They left us a gift of a rock. It was a quartz rock, but it had an inclusion in the middle that was kind of an oranges in color. It was really pretty. It almost reminded me of E.T., how it's heart glow, because it just was beautiful in the middle of it. But it wasn't, I used to find them and study how they made them. It didn't look like it was made by an Indian as an arrowhead because the weight wasn't even on each side and you didn't see any chips on the edge, but it was shaped like an arrowhead. But they left that beautiful rock on the banister right next to where they stood so we would get it as a gift. I cleaned it up and it's absolutely beautiful. Not only that, but they know I like footprints. So they have taken rocks, made a base on the bottom of it by rubbing it down, I guess, with their finger. I really don't know how they do it, to be honest with you. They got to be super strong and how mighty rough fingers to rub it down, but it looks like that's how they made it. And on the top side of it, they rubbed it, but they made the outline of a footprint on the top. And when they made the base, they made it angled so that you could put it on your desk like sort of like a picture, but not up that high, and it leaning up so you can see it better. I thought that was neat. They've left rocks with lines in it where they gave us different lines and shapes in it. They've done given us all kinds of gifts. One time I asked them to give us a gift because it's been a while. I said, why don't y'all leave us a gift? We're out there at the burn can burning some trash. About a month later, we're moving the burn cans to empty it because it was full. And right beside it, in between the bricks that we had in the burn can, was a huge boulder that had never been there before. And so they must have left it there for us, knowing that we go there a lot, but we didn't see it right away. It took a while to see it, but they left another huge river rock for us. So there's just so many things, so many interactions we've had with them that it's crazy how much and how smart they really are. And don't let people tell you that they're just an animal. I've learned that they are much closer to humans than animals. Now, do they have to kill animals to eat for food? Yes, they have to survive. Do they eat raw fish? Yes, they have to. That's how they eat. Now, they eat meat and they eat green stuff. They eat both. They eat Sort of like a person can eat meat and green stuff. They do the same thing. But so a lot of people think that makes them an animal. Well, it does, but realistically, we eat meat. Somebody's killing it and we're eating it. So does that make us any better than them? No. I mean, not really. It's just different. But they are very similar to people. They have a family they will protect. There's almost always more than one nearby. I always say, I pity the person trying to go kill one.
Mm.
It is not bad, especially if there's a male around. You can forget it if there's a male around because they're built to protect the family. They just are. I can tell you some stories with the big one where it was like Jurassic Park moments where the ground was shaking and they were 70 yards away and pushing trees that were 40 to 50 foot tall because they wanted me to leave. And then I would go ahead and leave. 2 weeks later, I'd find a baby print. And that's how I learned the babies here are born in May to the first week of the last week of May to the first week in July for the most part. Out of the 10 babies that we've seen over that period of time, 8 of the 10 have been born between the last week of May and the first week of July. We had one that showed up in the winter, the first week of winter. Now, the baby prince, the smallest one I've ever seen is 4 inches long. I call a baby something from 4 inches to 6.5 inches. I call a young one 4.5 to 6.5. And I call a juvenile 6.5 to 12. And then anything over that, I call an adult. Now, that's just my standard, how I think of it. There may be people smarter than me that have their own standard, but I get to see so many prints. I had to make some kind of parameters for me to judge, okay, what is this? But I usually can take I get a real good feeling of what's here because they don't hide their prints. So I can tell you one time I'm driving, my wife and I are driving down by the peach tree. And for some reason, the peach tree that they like the most, they left some peach pits on the fabric on the bottom. Before that, they had always taken the peaches, pit and all. Now imagine the big ones, jaws are so strong, they can just crunch up the peach pit and everything. I don't know about the young ones, but these peach pits are down there. And so I told my wife, I said, look, there's like 8 or 10 peach pits down there. I think they want us to plant some more of this type peaches for them because this is the one they like. I said, I need to look at the kind it is, a little tag on it to see what kind it is so I know what kind I need to get. But I didn't stop and take it off. The next time I'm going up the road, now as we're facing it, the peach tree's on the right, we're on the left. The wind blows from left to right. That tag, when we went the next time, was in the middle of the road, sitting on a tuft of grass. So we could see it. It had been ripped off. Now I'm like, wait a second. We were just talking about it and we didn't get it. Now here it is ripped off and put on this little high piece of grass right in the middle of where we're driving so we can see it. I went to all the other trees and the tags were still on them. And if the wind was blowing it, the wind would have blown it the other direction. I'm like, isn't that crazy? They were letting us know that they want some more of these peach trees. So they ripped the tag off and put it in the trail for us so we would remember to get it next time. Just crazy.
Neil, it's absolutely wild, this place you have. And I totally get why you're just saying it's in northern Georgia, because you really have, I mean, you have a nursery going on. That's a very special thing for sure. Have you ever tried to capture any audio on your property, or does that also fall under how you're not really able to take video and other things like that?
Audio is okay as long as it's far enough away from them.
Mm.
Now, I got in trouble one time because the boxes that I told you I put stuff in, one time I wanted to hear them talking. So what I did was I took one of those boxes, put a recorder in it, and took the little black microphone. The end of it overlapped the end of the box. And I put the little microphone underneath it where you couldn't see it. The next thing I do is I hear one walking out of the woods. I hear the microphone being pulled, and it was set on the marble plate, on the white sand, as if to say, "You're busted. We don't want you to do this." Now, there's even more to that story that's kind of humorous. They wouldn't eat any food there for 2 weeks, but when I went back there a couple of days, and all night I could hear footsteps at the edge of the woods because they wanted to go get something to eat. And I think one of the adults said, "They're playing games. Don't go eat the food." But there at the time, I was only using 2 of the plastic buckets, and one of them was on the ground. I didn't pick it up because I wasn't going to need it. And so when I went back one time, all the food was still there except the dog food was gone. The whole dog food bowl was empty. So I'm driving around it, and the empty one on the ground is gone. So I look at the empty one on the ground, and I'm looking around for it, and there in the woods behind some vines is the one that had the dog food with about an inch left in it. A juvenile probably was being a little smart butt and said, "I'm hungry. I'm going to stick this empty one up there, and I'm going to take this in there and eat it because we're not eating it at the thing where they're playing games at." They actually took it in the woods, but I had to apologize and told them I wouldn't do that anymore for them to start leaving their prints and eating the stuff again. So they were serious about it. But when I have it away from them, I can hear them. Now, my biggest problem is I'm just like a regular person. I have a job I have to go to earn a living, long hours, and I'm not good at taking the little disc that have 24 to 48 hours worth of recordings on it. Now, I've heard the Ohio howl. I've heard tree knocks like crazy. Of course, I hear tree knocks like crazy. Well, not like crazy. I hear tree knocks all the time, a lot anyway, especially if the lights go off. If the lights go off at the house, I'll have 4 or 5 tree knocks going off around the woods as if they're saying, "Hey, you need us? Is there anything we can do to help?" Because it's different. It's they pattern us. There's always lights on. Our kids always leave lights on. So they used to do a bunch of tree knocks, but they don't mind it if it's far enough away. But usually when they start sounding off, our dogs start going off, and it picks that up so much. I wish I had some made with the little round thing on it so I could just aim it at certain spots so it reduces that, but I've not been able to either find it or do it so far. Then trying to get to listen to the whole thing, I have to try to listen to the whole thing. Some people say you can go in Audible and go through and find the little peaks and stuff. I've not learned how to do that. I tried to put some disc in there, do it one time, and I was totally unsuccessful at it. But they don't mind me putting recorders down there. I've heard the whoops. I've heard them talking. I've heard the tree knock. I've heard some amazing things they've done. Some kind of ceremony was going on one time. It was crazy. But no, they will allow me to do it. I just can't do it right next to where they are. I have to do it, 50, 60 yards away and do it. You can still hear them in the woods.
I got another question for you. I do want to say thank you for spending your time so far. As we talked about in the pre-interview, this is a conversation that will probably take. It's going to be a long conversation spread out among probably more than one episode for sure. But have you ever heard any singing on your property?
I've never heard singing on the property, but I can tell you they love music. They absolutely love music. I would put a speaker on the back porch sometimes and play it. And there's this group called Home Free, which is an a cappella group. They love the sound of them. They'll come up at the edge of the woods and listen to that. And one time late at night, we don't care if they tap on the door to let us know they're there. The young ones like to do that sometimes. But my wife and I were in there. We were just being in a silly mood. We were cleaning the kitchen. We were going to have something the next day with kids and relatives. So we were cleaning up. We put on the music real loud and was playing it from the TV, I think probably on YouTube. And every time a song would stop, outside on the front porch, one would tap at the door like tap, 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 like play another one, then another one would come on. Well, when the pause, it would go tap, 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 because they would sneak up to the house and wanting to hear the music as good as they can. I actually had one time that during the middle of the night, I forgot I'd left the speaker on out there. iPad into the bathroom. It was still on music and it started playing it on the back porch through the speaker. So I was like, okay, well, I like that song. I'm going to listen to it. I listened to a couple of songs and then I turned it over to a podcast about football. Out there, right beside my car, right in front of my car, I have those big, huge trash cans. One went wham and slapped the top of the trash can. I learned real quick. They either don't like the football team that I like, or they wanted more music. So I put on more music to let them listen to it until either the battery went dead or my iPad, went quiet. So, but I can tell you, they love music. It will draw them in, especially if it's a type that they like.
It's extremely interesting. There's a song I've heard that is very effective. I think it's called Bolero. It would be interesting if you'd be able to track that down, maybe give that a try. It would be totally different than what they were used to, but it has quite interesting drum beat to it that has been pretty effective over on the West Coast, from what I hear.
I've got something I want to do because the house is 2-story and there's a window up above it. I was thinking about playing music on the back, putting some cut off logs out there for seats at the edge of trees and getting up there with a thermal binocular. I don't think that they can see that to get pictures of them coming up and sitting down listening to the music. The only problem I have is I know they can read my thoughts. Now, I don't know if they can read everybody's thoughts. Some people say it's a frequency or whatnot. I'm nothing special, but I know they can read my thoughts. So the only reason why I don't do it is for the simple fact that, not that I think that they will see the thermal binocular, but the fact that I think they'll read in my mind what I'm doing, because they can read your consciousness and your subconsciousness, I've learned. So that's the only reason why I don't do it, because I would love to get a juvenile and a baby, one on all fours, quadruped, and then the juveniles walking up with it and sitting on the log, listening to the music, sitting on the stump, listening to the music. But it took so long to build up the trust and the respect. I'm afraid I will lose some of that. It's not a quick process. It's not. Both sides have to work at it for it to work the way it has. So that's one thing, that the only reason I hadn't done that yet, because I would love to get a good thermal picture of them walking up and moving and sitting like that.
Man, Neil, what a massive amount of things that have happened, and it feels like there's way more that you could share as well. I mean, I'd love it if you'd be able to, if you'd be up for coming on back on the show sometime in the future. Maybe we can set something up.
I don't have any problem with that. I've got probably over 30 hours worth of interactions. Like I've been spatting off one after another, after another, after another. because it happens all the time. There's something that happened this week would freak people out how it happened. But, there's things that they have special abilities that we can't really understand. But they have to prove to me at least 9 times that they can do it before I will say, yes, they can do it. Like, yes, they can read my mind. I know for a fact they can put thoughts in my mind. There's a lot of things that they can do between. I can feel when I'm down there, I can feel things. How do I put this? And then I sound weird. I can feel how they're feeling. Like, in other words, one day I was down there and I put out some stuff at the gifting station, and in the woods, something growled at me twice. Well, I knew what it was. I knew it was one of them. But I got the feeling was I was taking too long because I was taking pictures of prints and measuring them, and it was hungry and wanted me to leave so it could get to the food. And I had to just kind of set it straight and say, look, this is the deal. Y'all leave me prints so I can see them and keep up with all of y'all with stuff that's going on. And I leave you stuff to eat. It didn't make any more sounds. And then I let it know when I was leaving. But it was not a thing where I was scared at all because I could feel why they did it. And I know that sounds weird, but I trust our feelings, and my wife and I, and say she'd go sometimes, well, what are you feeling? I said, no, they're just letting us know that they're there right now. There's been some things where things have happened between her and a little baby. And so anyway, it's just weird. I can get feelings like that. But it's not only here, it's at other places. And I go other places, they let me know they're there. Tree knock, a whoop, crazy stuff. It's pinging me, which is a weird thing by itself. So it's just really weird, but it's amazing at the same time. And I'm learning from it. And just imagine if they're in the woods, people always talk about how how is it that something 10 foot tall and weighs over 1,000 pounds can't be seen in the woods? Well, from what I've learned in a short period of time about wildlife and how they communicate, crows, how they give things away, the squirrels, all the animals, and people think they're quiet going through the woods. People are loud. I mean, they make a lot of noise going in the woods. So if they can tell what's going on around them, some people say that they can hear or feel the frequency of electronics. Some people say they can turn translucent or totally invisible. I know that they can read my thoughts. If they can do one of those things and know what's going on around it, you ain't got a chance to see it unless it's just purely by accident or they want you to.
Mm-hmm.
Because they can slip around you. They can go up in a tree if they can turn translucent, and you can go right underneath them, look up in the tree, and you'll never see them. It blend in with the leaves. So it's amazing the abilities they have. It really is.
Neil, I know we've talked about the bigfootsociety.com website, but what can people expect to find if they check that out? Or is there also a way they can reach out to you as well?
We have a website that's got a lot of information about Bigfoot in it. The patterns that you can see in the woods, because things they do are different than normal forest animals. What you can need to do. If you think you've got some around your house and you don't want them there, what you can do to try to keep them away from your house, or things you can do if you want to try to befriend them. And you're not going to befriend every group. They have to have the right mentality. And I've learned that the male is the one that sets the rules. Now, the females have a lot of pull in it, but the males set the rules. And if the male has had a bad experience with humans, chances are you're never going to really build a relationship or cohabitate with them anywhere like that we have here with this group. The female here really likes to be around us. And she's been able to influence the male that he tolerates it. But whenever he's here and there's a baby born, he doesn't want us around because he wants to just make sure everything is safe and make it go as smooth and easy as possible. But we have the website that's got that on it. And we have a Facebook page that's also bigfoottalk.com. And it's got a lot of the stories that we're talking about like this with pictures, like the dog food bag that's right by my car, where they will like the salmon type. I've got a picture of my car where it's sitting and everything like that. And I did go back to the trash can and try to see if I could get the other one, and pull it out. No, I couldn't even touch the other bag because it was so far down there, and I've got long arms, but their arms are extremely long. But we have the Facebook page that people can see the stories at. Now, also, if you're in the Atlanta, Georgia area, we are going to be putting on a conference. It's called Encounters Conference 2025, where we are going to have a great group of people that are from a variety, but it's going to be concentrated on people that have seen them or done movies about them and researched them, and myself with the Habituation site. And we're going to try to do as much talking to people so we can share what we've seen with people. That's the whole idea for this conference, because when I go to conferences, sometimes I get upset. I've got 3 or 4 questions I want to ask, and I never get a chance to ask them. So I feel like, I didn't learn all that I wanted to learn. Well, this one is going to be done in such a way that we are sharing it and letting you ask questions so that we can help you answer the questions that you want to know. So it would be on our website, on the Facebook page is also a flyer for it. And maybe we can put one on this episode or something so people can see it. But that's going to be a really good thing because it's going to be totally different than the others thing the most of people go to.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. I mean, I've actually been looking into this one myself, and you've got some really, it's not the normal people that you would see, but they're good people. Like, for example, a good friend of mine, Amanda, the Bigfoot lady from the Expedition Bigfoot Museum, is going to be one of the speakers. She's great. I mean, that's a great speaker to have for this first year of the conference. And I'd say definitely people check it out. We'll have links in the show notes so people can all check that out. But Neil, man, it has been just such a fascinating listen to you. I've learned a lot through this one. And yeah, we'll definitely be setting something up for you to come back on a later time to continue your accounts of what you've been experiencing down there in North Georgia. But thank you for coming on the show, Neil.
You're welcome. And I will answer anything because I'm not shy to answer anything, because that's why we're doing this. We're doing this to help tell people what we're seeing. When people say, well, you need to do this, you need to do that to give us proof. I'm a knower of their existence. I'm not trying to prove to people they exist. I'm trying to share what we've learned about them, because we have a unique situation to where we can see stuff that in a period of a month that some people for 20 years may not see. So we're trying to share that with the people that want to learn about them.
That's great. That's a great way to put it. Well, yeah, definitely listeners, check out this upcoming conference. And Neil, pleasure to talk to you on the show today. And we'll definitely be in touch.
Sounds good. And I hope everybody has a great night.
Just want to take a few minutes to say thank you to you, all my listeners, for listening to the podcast. Please take a minute to help out the show by subscribing on YouTube, making sure you hit the bell so you don't miss any notifications, and share the episode on YouTube with a friend. Also, if you're listening to us on a podcast, thank you so much. Make sure that you're subscribed, share the show with a friend. Really, it's all about sharing the show wherever you can. If you've had a Bigfoot encounter related to the following or know someone who has, please reach out to me at bigfootsociety@gmail.com or pass on my email. Here's a list. Number 1, encounters from Franklin County, Texas. Number 2, encounters from the entire state of Iowa. Number 3, encounters from Oak Ridge, Oregon, or the surrounding area. Number 4, any individuals that know about Bigfoot being flown off after the Mount St. Helens eruption. Number 5, individuals that have had a Bigfoot encounter while in the military. Number 6, those that have had a Bigfoot encounter in the southern New Hampshire or north central Massachusetts area, including Franklin County, Massachusetts. Number 7, individuals that have had a Bigfoot encounter in a Bible camp or Boy Scout camp setting. Number 8, individuals that have had Bigfoot try to enter their house forcibly while they were living inside. Number 9, individuals that have actively have a Bigfoot living on their property. And lastly, any sightings that are in the Ouachita National Forest area of Oklahoma or Arkansas. A special thank you to all the Bigfoot Society Patreon and YouTube channel members. It's your support that helps keep the show going, and I extremely appreciate it. I'll see you back next time, listeners. Sasquatch Summerfest this year, July 11th through the 12th. It's going to be fantastic. July 11th through 12th in Green Waters Park in Oak Ridge, Oregon. And listeners, if you're going to go, you can get a 2-day ticket for the cost of one if you use the code BFS, like Bigfoot Society, but BFS, and it'll get you some off your cost. Priscilla was nice enough to provide that for my listeners. So there you go. I look forward to seeing you there. So make sure you head over to www.sasquatchsummerfest.com and pick up your tickets today.